If you're the leader of a team and your team does a lot of public speaking or presentations, slide decks, demos, this video is for you. My team was working with a team in the tech space, and these people are extremely knowledgeable about their space. They know everything inside out. However, they struggle when it comes to presenting slide decks to their clients, because when they present the slide decks, the hope is that the client likes what they do and they bring them on as a service provider. The leader talked to us and said, hey, I'm noticing I've promoted these people from inside my team. They're doing exceptionally well. But when it comes to those calls, something is off. I don't know what it is. We've never had any sort of formal presentation coaching. Can you come in and have a look? I said, sure. So myself and my co-coach, we flew down there. This is what we saw. We usually get them to present in front of us, and that will allow us to just see what the problem is. Because oftentimes people will tell us what the problem is, and then the problem we see is very different. So we don't want to revolve an entire workshop around a problem that doesn't really exist. So I had it was a very small workshop of about 7 people. I had one of them present in front of us. Slide decks, beautiful, clean messaging, very, very easy to understand. However, the issue with the presentation was when the person was presenting it, it looked like him and I were going through the presentation together for the first time. In other words, it seemed like he hadn't seen the presentation before. So what did this look like? This is what it would look like. I said, okay, so slide number 1, we're going to talk about this. Yeah, so in this one, we can do this, and this is what we do. Yeah, so in this picture, you can see. He was discovering the content on this slide at the same time as the audience. So this might not seem like a big deal, but if I'm a client about to pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars for your service, and I'm discovering everything you're talking about, and I notice you don't know what's on the slide, you don't know what you're talking about, instantly the trust drops. So I asked him, hey, I'm curious, have you delivered this presentation before? He said, yeah, just once or twice. So that I knew there was just not enough familiarity built. So that was one of the challenges. The second challenge is we were doing the same thing, but on Zoom. One of the presenters was screen sharing and showing how he did it. And what he had was he was going through the slides one by one, but the entire time I was speaking, I was thinking, well, you're saying a lot of things, but none of what you're saying is on the slide, which is good. You shouldn't be just repeating what's on the slide anyway. But it sounds like you're reading from something that is detached from what I'm seeing on screen. So I asked him, do you have a script in front of you? And he said, oh yeah, I've got everything that I wanted to say written out, and I'm just reading it out loud. Now here's the problem. We do this because we want to be over-prepared. We do this because we don't want to miss some details, and that's understandable. But the challenge is, if people can tell you're reading off a script, you lose trust very quickly with the audience. So for example, let's say I'm teaching you right now about public speaking and presentation training, and all of a sudden I do this. Today, I want to teach you the 3 best tips on public speaking and presentation skills. The first presentation skill thing that I can teach you is something that I learned from my client. Can you tell? It might have been the same exact information, but now I'm not in conversation with you. I'm not present in the moment. I'm reading from something else because I'm so concerned about doing a good job, about saying the right words, that I don't even care if you're participating. So what do most people do when that happens? They just tune out. Like, do I really have to listen to this whole thing? If you were going to read out the entire script with no emotion, with no not being present in the moment, why don't you just email me the script, right? So it's not just about losing trust, it's also about your tonality. Because when you read something, you don't sound conversational. You'll sound very robotic. You will sound like this, blah, 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 blah. It's an instant reminder to the audience, okay, I can tune out and I can come back in later. The last point that I want to emphasize, this is something that we work with many teams of various sizes that they never consider, and it's continually surprising to me. When they're giving the presentation, so they've got module 1, module 2, this thing, that thing, case studies, blah, 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 I will ask them, when the presentation is over, what do you want the audience to think, feel, or do after it's done? 9 times out of 10, they'll say, well, one of the things we want them to know is our process from start to finish. We also want them to know we did this and that. They'll list down 15 things. So to me, that shows that we just don't have clarity. We're not clear on what message we want them to remember. Because once the presentation is over, they're not going to remember the 400 slides that you presented to them. They're not, because we are terrible at remembering data. We're going to remember stories, but more likely, we're going to remember one single message, one single takeaway, or maybe 3 takeaways from the presentation. So if you think about Martin Luther King, I have a dream. That's the most memorable part of the speech. But many people don't know a word from the rest of his speech. JFK, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Most people can't tell you a single word from the rest of his speech. Why? Because it's the message and the takeaway that really stands out. So the 3 biggest things that I want to share with you from the experience we've had with training this team is, first, come up with a message. What do you want the audience to know, to think, feel, or do, and then include relevant details that push that message forward. If it doesn't push the message forward, then it is irrelevant to the objective. So have a message. Number 2, when you are speaking, rehearse it enough times so it's not like you're doing it for the first time. You don't look like an amateur. You'll be shocked how well you can come across if you just say the words start to finish and you know what's going to come next. A lot like when you're singing a song, you know the lyrics, you know the chorus, you know the bridge, you know when what words are going to come up. You can sing it with confidence. Even if you're not a professional singer, you can do it well enough just because you're familiar with it. So the same thing with presentations. Most people don't take the time to just run it through start to finish. And the last point is, do not read from the script. Don't read from the script. You can refer to a script. You can have, okay, I want to make sure I mention this point, this statistic, this name of the company. You look at it, talk about ABC case study. You look at it, let's talk about that case study because you know about it. But if you are reading everything from the passage and you talk like this, no one's going to be paying attention. So remember, do not go into a presentation without rehearsing. Always speak in a conversational tone. Do not read from a script. And number 3, you want to make sure you have a clear message when you're going into the presentation.